Hey man, how's it going?
Hey, good. Sorry. I wasn't sure if you wanted one page or the other page, so I found the right page.
Yeah, that's great. We have Demolition Man here in the house. Yeah, that's great.
Boy time, the boy time.
So, first of all, I have to tell you this. When I was researching your stuff on Wikipedia, there was something I read that made me lose my shit totally. You were on Master and Commander, that movie. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was. I played.
And you acted on.
I played.
Yeah, Mr. Lamb.
Yeah, Mr. Lamb, the ship's carpenter, Mr. Lamb. Yeah, I actually did. You know, I used to work in theater. I mean, I still do. So right now, I'm working for the Lion King, for Disney's Lion King, as an audition.
Really?
Yeah, but I was working for the Royal Shakespeare Company as a technician, and I just ended up doing some acting because one of the cast members, we were in India, one of the guys got really sick, so they asked me if I could fill in because I knew Shakespeare and I knew the part, so I did that. And
wow!
All of a sudden, I came back to the UK, did it again for the Royal Shakespeare Company, just a little bit of acting, not too much, but I really liked it. Did some workshops. The next thing I was on the set of Judge Dredd next to Sylvester Stallone going, shit.
Wow! You worked with Sly!
Yeah, it was amazing. And then, you know, I got some TV and I did another theater piece. I did some more TV and then I was working for Queen on the...
Really?
Yeah. And we were installing their musical, We Will Rock You, in town.
Yeah, I've seen...
My agent called me. I was working and my agent called and said, can you get to this place, this hotel? There's somebody wants to meet you, so for a part in a film. So I went to this hotel, very posh hotel, and met a guy called Peter Weir. And Peter Weir... Yeah,
the director.
The director.
Witness.
The Truman Show, Gallipoli, Picnic at Hanging Rock. I mean, amazing. And so I rushed into the audition. And I was really dirty because I'd been working manually. So I said, I'm really sorry, I'm doing a job for Queen at the minute, so I don't have so much time. So we had a bit of a talk, and then we did some, you know, impromptu acting. And then I left. I said, I have to get back to work. So I just ran away. And I thought, this is a big Hollywood movie. I'll never get this movie. And my agent called me the next day and I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't have much time. I was in a bit of a rush. It was shit. And it's a big Hollywood movie. When I finished talking, because I talk a lot, anybody who knows me knows that. And most people get bored of me. But when I finished talking, my agent said, have you finished? I said, yeah, I finished. And she went, okay, he loved you and you go to Mexico in March, and he wants 5 months. I was on that movie and it was amazing. Absolutely amazing experience. Yeah.
So how was Russell Crowe like?
My acting career in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was Russell Crowe like?
Pardon?
How was Russell Crowe like?
You know, the thing is with Russell, you know, not so much now because it's been quite a few years, 10 years or more, but, you know, I didn't know how he'd be, and you heard all the rumors about how he was.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was nothing like that. He was like just a regular guy. He liked to watch football, Australian football. He liked to drink. Like to smoke.
Oh, that's good.
He trained and just he was just one of the guys. And I think when you're in Hollywood, there's a particular way you have to act, you know, and it's all fake and it's all smiling and you have to play this whole political game all the time to get roles. And Russell doesn't do that. He never did. So that's why the rumor started. He was difficult. He wasn't difficult, but he would go like, fuck off, if he wanted to say fuck off. And you're not supposed to say fuck off in Hollywood, so people would get shot, you know. But he was brilliant, and he was so generous with me. I still have one of his swords that he gave me. He gave me a rugby top from his team, from Dolan. So many gifts, and I still have them. And yeah, he was a very generous, really nice guy, and I really we got on so well, and he remained a friend for a lot of years. And when I came to London to meet him, and that was really great. And then he moved on, I guess. But yeah, if I saw him tomorrow, we'd still have that relationship. So good guy, good guy.
Awesome. So we'll have a few questions from some fans who asked me some stuff, but I have some personal questions for me. So first one, you were in Venom, which was one of the most influential bands in the world with all the black metal stuff. Are you aware of the movie? Are you aware of the Norwegian black metal bands and all the stuff that happened later? Do you know these bands?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I know of the bands as well, and some of them are very good friends. Some I know but don't know so well, but I still class as, and I think that, Venom, coined the phrase black metal to describe their music, because they didn't want to sound like anybody else, My band had total metal, that's described as craft. They had black metal described them. And that was then there was the new wave of British heavy metal. So, people were trying to put themselves in a separate place. This is what we are. We're not just Bon Jovi or whatever it is. And that progressed. When the genre came, like 90s, when that began, I think on a musical level, they were more a progression from Bathory, who I loved, Slayer. If you listen to early Bathory, they put Venom on the first record, but by the time he gets more progressive, you can hear where Slayer got the ideas of their early records. And of course, where black metal became, this operatic, cinematic, just
atmospheric,
beautiful thing. And I think that's where they drew the sonic influence from. And but the genre name, black metal, it just had that something special, so they took the title. I mean, what's quite strange is, Immortal, Burger, all those bands, which, I love as well, some of that is one of my favorite. And I mean, someone very close to me, very special, introduced me to Mayhem, only relatively recently. I mean, I'd heard Mayhem, of course, I know the stories and stuff, but it never kind of grabbed me. But, after listening to for like 2 years, it's like they're like one of my favorite bands now, and really understanding where they were going. The same for Burzum, But I think that they took it somewhere else, and that became kind of magical, It became quite magical. Very different to what Venom's idea was. But that's what's beautiful about our scenes, is you don't know where the music is, or, and it just goes into something quite incredible, and so yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, funny thing is, I remember listening to Primeval when I was 16, and I was blown away. So, thank you for this. Anyway, so you guys, I think like everyone else who's in the music business nowadays, you had to stop because of the COVID thing. I just heard that England is just opening up for shows. So, how did it affect you guys?
Well, I mean, we live in three different. I'm based in London, in England, and Mantis lives in a place called Toma in Portugal. So he lives.
Oh, cool.
And the drummer, War Machine, Mr. Kling now, he lives in Tampa, Florida. So we were in 3 different places with 3 different kind of problems and rules. And of course, in the UK, we then had Brexit on top of fucking COVID. So,
yeah.
It's all been pretty mad. And so live shows just stopped, but we assumed maybe for a couple of months, and then it was a few more months, and then it was, here we are. And so even we had shows planned for summer this year from last year. We had to push them into 2022. And Australia was supposed to be early this year. Then it was the end of this year. And now Australia's been locked down again. So that's going to be the end of 2022. And it's like, wow, what's going on? But I mean, I think just before COVID, I guess we were fortunate, but just before COVID, I had a broken hip, and for about
I don't know.
for 15 years, my hip was collapsing on me. So it was incredibly painful all that time. And we were still touring, you know, we did like 600 fucking shows in a year. So we were touring like crazy, and it was very, very difficult. So just before COVID became a problem, we finished our season with Hellfest and Wacken. And then I thought, right, I'm going to have my operation. And while I'm recovering, we can make the new album, because the last one was 2017. So we wanted to get the new album ready. So we were going to just do that. I was going to recuperate from my new hip. We would make the new album, and then it would be ready. I'd be fit. We'd go straight out on tour. But that didn't work out because of COVID. And also, just before we did the final festival season, Mantis had a heart attack. And
oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, for a few years, we'd been running through airports in Sao Paulo or fucking Chile or wherever, running through these airports trying to get, and sometimes on stage, he'd been having a really bad chest and he was in a lot of pain, but he always thought maybe too much coffee or too many cigarettes or something. And so we didn't think about it being something as serious as it was. And he was in Tomar in Portugal. He went to the local shop, and he had a heart attack in the car, and he died in the back of an ambulance. He literally died, and they had to bring him back to life. So that had a remarkable effect on him, you know, physically, obviously, but he's well now. They fixed him up. I mean, I flew straight there the next day because he's my brother. So, but I'd never seen him look like that, and he was terrified. But I think it's not just the physical, but it's the mental thing that you actually died. And now that is very difficult for him to come to terms with it. Of course, he's embracing life, but you have to try and equate the fact that he knows what it's like when you die. And so,
that makes me kind of curious about it. Yeah. So this leads me to a question I took from one of your fans. He told me, how do you prepare for a show, since it's a lot of energy? I've seen that. You're a very intense performer, and since you're not like a young kid anymore, how do you take care of yourself for this, physically, for that?
You know, when you're young, it's you know, you just have
drugs.
You can stay up for days and it doesn't matter. And now I'm 27. It's a bit different.
Okay.
Yeah, now I'm 27. Now, I think the thing is, you know what? It's, you know, when people look for the fountain of youth, all these fairy stories and all these tales of the fountain of youth. And I think the fountain of youth is music, because, you know, me and Mantis used to say, when people ask us, we would say that, you know, before I go on stage, I'm, you know, 50 something. When I get on stage, I'm 20 something. And when I finish and I come off stage, I'm like 70 something. So it's like, you know, because.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And you know, I think there's a genuineness, there's an honesty about performing. If music comes from your soul and it touches your soul, when you perform, it's real, absolutely real. You believe the words, you believe what you're saying, you believe what you're doing, and you kind of elevate to another place. It's kind of transcendental in a way. Or for me, you know, instead of me being, because I can be a grumpy git and difficult sometimes, but what I do is I manifest that into the Demolition Man. So I can get on stage, I can become him. He doesn't have any rules. He doesn't care. He just plays without worrying about what he's doing. He just lets it happen. So it's almost like he comes through me. And then when I'm finished, you know, I need about 30 minutes to relax, and then I become Tony again. And so I think the energy just comes from the music and the people. You know, if the music's going and the audience starts to just bring their energy up, you feel that, and that's what keeps driving. So you can't do, you know, you can go to the cinema and watch a movie. It's already done, and you can clap or shout or cheer or throw things at the screen, but it just keeps going because you're not involved in it. You're just observing it. But if you go to the theater and you watch a live,
it's different.
Completely different, because they can hear you, they can sense you. So there's a different kind of electricity, and that's what happens with music. Yeah.
So there's another question. Yeah, there's a question by Ricardo, and we've got a group on WhatsApp filled with guitar players, and I told them I was going to talk to you, and they were like, they lost their shit as well. So they asked, one of them is asking me, so Avi, the cover just looks, the big demon looks a lot like you. Was it intentional?
Well, funny enough, the artist is a Bosnian artist, and he does artworks for orphanages. So he does these amazing pieces of art, and then he sells them, and the money goes straight to the orphanages, because Kosovo had a big war, and so that's all he does. He doesn't take any money for them. He just does that. So I had this idea on a sketch when we were doing the album, and I wanted to have it as a salute to the fans. And I was thinking, you know, how do we do that? And in Rome, in the legions, they would say Ave, you know, it was like a salute.
Yeah. Rome, yeah,
I
sure.
thought, yeah, that's brilliant. And of course, Ave Maria is a very beautiful song, which is, you know, very in tune with the heavenly idea. And so I've done these sketches about a kind of Luciferian demon. And then I just happened to be going through, and I saw a piece of art that he did, and it inspired me. There was an installation of art called Lucifer Dying, and I went to see it in a very small church, and it was this like a statue of a Lucifer hanging in like cables, and he was falling to earth, but he'd been caught in all these electrical cables, and I wanted that kind of image. And then I spoke to him and gave him my sketches and ideas, and he came up with that, and it was beautiful. So I don't know if it was based on me.
Looks like
the ideas of the sketches, but I love the piece. And what's great about it, if you look at the cover, it's you know, you don't know if it's the end of the world, or if it's the beginning of the world, or if it's the end of man, or if it's a warning. And within it is, you know, all of the images. We have the two sheep, the people, but one of the sheep is a wolf in a sheep's costume, because, you know, wolf in sheep's clothing. There's the original temple of David, you know, there's Adam and Eve, you know, so there's lots of symbolism in there. So I think it was quite a powerful statement. But yeah, I love that. But that's how it came from. So it could be me, I guess. Maybe he did base it on me, but I never looked at it that way.
Yeah, so that was a good question they gave me.
Yeah.
So anyway, so people over here, they're asking if they're gonna get the old Venom albums with your voice over here re-released as you did internationally, because over here the new versions, they cost a fortune. They just want to know if it's gonna be released in Brazil as well.
Yes, well, actually, the Brazilian label who did the Atomcraft, they licensed the Atomcraft.
Oh, really? Atomcraft as well?
Yeah, a Brazilian.
Oh, awesome.
So they licensed and re-released all that. So I'm currently talking to them about the Demolition Years box set, because the box set itself kind of sold out so fast. We did vinyl and CD. It was all the works. But we have... That's
really great.
We have all of the re-recordings that the recordings that I remastered and put all the lyrics in, so we have them. So currently talking to the Brazilian label who did the Atomcraft releases, to be able to and rather than import them to Brazil, we can manufacture them there, so that the Brazilian fans can just buy them, you know, for a regular price, rather than pay all of that, because that's the worst thing. You know, I have a good friend who does metallized distro in Mexico, and that it's the same thing there. We just, you know, he prints them all up, and the cost is much better for the fans. They can afford to buy them, whereas, you know, if he's shipping them from Nuclear Blast or from Europe, it's crazy stuff, you know.
Yeah, I know, because nowadays our currency is very devalued because of all stuff that's happening in the last few years. Yeah. So that leads me to a question. So as you're a musician, as you're a performer, and we had all this lockdown, the shows were canceled and stuff. So did the British government help you guys, or at least in your case, you who live in the UK and stuff?
Baldy, I love you.
Hi, Baldy.
Yeah, that's my nickname from the most amazing person.
Oh,
But no, I mean, the government did put things in place, but what's kind of weird is that they didn't particularly help the industry directly, and you had to apply for certain help. But there was a loophole, and the problem was that most of the musicians you fall into that loophole because you have to qualify as like a company, but you have to have X amount of money coming in a year. And as you know yourself, you're a working musician. It doesn't always
yeah,
work. You know, you might just have enough income coming in. I mean, if you're Metallica, you don't worry about it. You know, and someone like Nurgle. I mean, you know, if you look at Behemoth or Danny Filth, you know, from Cradle of Filth, you know, they get hammered sometimes by people going, oh, you know, they're just trying to, you know, churn money out. But it's like, yeah, but that's how you survive, you know, by giving
exactly.
more and as much as you can. And I think they invent ways to give you something really creative, but it's all part of the whole scene now. And unlike in the 80s or even earlier, you know, where you could sell records and you could make an income, since everything went online and product, you know, got put to one side, so records weren't selling, it was all about streaming. It tends to be
Yeah,
the case that, you know, you live is where you make your money. So and that fluctuates. So the government had this loophole where, you know, even festivals were applying for government help, and Bloodstock managed to get some help, which was brilliant, but they tried for the longest time to get anything, and then the government
mm,
conceded. And what I find is really strange is, you know, it's the because some bands just couldn't survive at all. They just had to stop because they had to get regular jobs, because, you know, not everybody is Metallica and can afford that.
yeah, yeah.
I just think it's such a shame, because some of those, by the time they get a chance to come back, when it all is open up again, it might be too late, or maybe they can't get the right guys together, or maybe they feel uninspired, you know, and they lose it. And I just think it was such a shame, you know. And of course, in the UK, we have Brexit. So now we go back to, we have to apply for work visas to go and play in France. So, I mean, they're talking about waiving those visas, but, you know, it's still a great problem. And I mean, we were supposed to play Armageddon Fest in Sao Paulo, and we were going to
I remember.
we were booked to play it, but even that's been delayed. And even though it's been delayed until next year, we're still got our fingers crossed that Brazil will be, you know, under the government, will be in a state where we can go easily and people can go to shows because of the COVID thing. So it's very, very difficult to work your way through it. I don't know one artist that didn't announce tours and in the spring, and then announce them pushed into the summer, and then announce them pushed into the autumn, and they still haven't.
Yeah, I've seen some of that really.
Yeah.
So that leads me to a different question. So how was the Ave album written? So how was the process? I was very intrigued because even though it's a modern record, it has some rawness to it. It feels real, and it kind of sounds analog, you know. So
Yeah.
how was it recorded, written?
Well, I mean, the new record is very analog, but
Yeah, it sounds brutal, you know.
yes, but you know, I think the thing is, what the intention was to take what we were live, so that energy, that feeling, you know, that atmosphere that we create live, and the amount of energy that we wanted to capture that and put it on record. And
So do you guys record it like in the same room, like the 80s and stuff?
well, what happened? Abaddon was the drumming for the album, so we put him in a studio in Newcastle, sent him the guitar stems, and then he played to that. And then I flew to Portugal, and me and Mantis put down bass and guitars there, and then I did all the vocals there. We lyricized it and did all the vocals. So we did as much as we could as a band live.
Sounds like
It wasn't quite old school. We weren't all in the studio, which is how Abaddon liked to work. And unfortunately, because of that, he was working remotely, and it kind of was very difficult for him. I understood why, because he was really old school. And that's how Venom did it. But me and Jeff had progressed ourselves, and he just struggled, and what he delivered, you know, it just wasn't up. It wasn't up to standard. The label didn't think so. The management didn't think so. Jeff didn't think so. And I couldn't help it. So we had to kind of digitize some of the drums and replace it. But we kept the energy and the writing as much as possible. Usually, like, we just finished a new album, and I just finished the which will come out early 2022. And I think if you think Bear was dark and had some brutality, wait till you hear this new one, because it's all analog and it sounds fucking monstrous. But
wow,
it's
yeah, with the tape and stuff, all that.
Well, you wait till you hear it. Yeah, wait till you hear it. I mean, I just heard the final. Engel did the mastering. He's done stuff for Metal Bleed, the guy who did the mastering, and he just remastered, and he sent me the files today. And when I heard it, it was like, holy shit, this is heavy. But normally what would happen is I'd play some ideas, Jeff would play some ideas, he'd throw them to me, I'd throw them to him, I'd write some lyrics, he'd write some lyrics, we'd come together and put the whole thing together. But with Arve, you know, Venom Inc. had gone to the next level so quick.
Yeah.
And we didn't have management, so I was getting John Sazula and Chuck Billy from Testament on board to help manage us, and I was negotiating to find a deal, which we got Nuclear Blast. So I just said to Jeff, you just start writing, because he has his studio in Toma in Portugal. You just start writing, send me whatever you've got, and if you get stuck, tell me, and I'll start writing too. But let me focus on the live shows and the business and all of that, because I had to set up a company and everything. So it was just too much work. So he focused on writing, but everything he sent me, I fucking loved it. It
was great.
I love that. Right, do another one. And then he sent me, and all of a sudden we had like 20 odd songs or whatever it was. So I just said, okay, stop. That's the album. Let's just stop there. So that was how we ended up with that. And I went to Portugal, where we finished them off, you know. But that's how Arve came together. I mean, that was just Jeff writing, and boom, it was there. You know, with the new album, it's kind of been a bit different because of lockdowns. So what I kind of did was I stayed in my home studio, wrote my pieces. He wrote his there in Portugal, and then we file shared. Kling went into his studio in Tampa and did all of his drums live, and then we passed that back. So everything was really live, really vibrant, and it just sounds amazing. So yeah, quite a slightly different process for this one, but yeah, that's kind of how we normally do it anyway. He'd come up with something that he has, because he's quite prolific at writing, and I'm kind of lazy. Not that I get lazy about
Fingers,
but the writing, I do it when I, you know. So there's always, I'm a workaholic, so there's always like a million things going on I'm trying to stay on top of. So sometimes to sit down and write, I'm like, ugh, you know, I don't mind. I mean, I just went through the whole process with Sabatonero, which was a tribute album I did for COVID workers in Italy, and also Smoke.
Oh, that thing, that Sabatonero, you had the girls from Nervosa, right?
That's right. I got. Oh, yeah. We picked the songs, and I wanted to, you know, for the album, and because it's a tribute album, but was for charity. I got to pick my favorite Sabbath songs, so which is NIB and Killing Yourself to Live. And when I did Killing Yourself, I was working with with Manx, who did the vocals for Smoke Rights. She's the singer with Smoke Rights, and amazing. And I just thought, I really have to get her on. I really want her to do something. And then I thought, I've got an idea. So I contacted Preeka Amaral from
yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, she's brilliant. And I just done a thing for Metal Against Coronavirus for Brazil, where she asked me to get a song called Brain Dead. So we did that together. So I thought, right, this is my turn to get her to come back. So I said, would you put the solo on Killing Yourself to Live? And then I contacted Torture Squad, Maya Poetes, who's a good friend. And
yeah, I love her. She's a great friend of mine.
Brilliant. And what a singer. And I said,
yeah, I know.
Yeah. So I said, would you sing a duet with Maximina on this? And I thought I think the voices might work, and they killed it. It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah,
It's
she's incredible.
Yeah. So what I love about that is it's Black Sabbath, and you know, Smoke writes with Maximilian. They're like doom, and May and Prika are like death metal, thrashy death.
Yeah, I know.
And so there's 3 women from 3 different countries. Maximilian is from Poland, and May and Briga from Brazil, and they're young, and they're from different, and they're doing Black Sabbath. So that shows the influence. So it's an amazing song. And if anybody's listening or watching, please, Killing Yourself to Live, go and have a look at our Sabatonero on YouTube or whatever, the videos up, and just listen to those.
That song is from Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, I have it right. It's great. It's great record. Great song.
And I always loved the song because I come from that working class. It's about the working class. Giza wrote about the working class environment.
Oh, yeah. It has a ring to it. Just like Russia's Working Man.
Oh, just brilliant. And the girls, just amazing. And it's 3 girls doing metal, doing Sabbath.
Yeah, it's good now that nowadays we get lots of women doing great bands doing metal, you know. And my her first band I ever heard was called The Promises, and they were kind of like a death metal version of Rush. Yeah, they were incredible.
Brilliant. And you know, the other thing is like you know, you now have Nervosa, so you have Diva and Luna.
Yeah, they're from different countries.
Yeah. Mia Wallace from Italy, and Diva from Spain, and Prika, that's Nervosa. And then Fernanda and Luna went to Crypta, and then they've got Tonya from Holland. And so you got 2 bands, all female, from one thing. It's just
and it's the same.
Amazing. Yeah. I love it. I love that, you know. Someone asked on social media the other day, I think it was Bart Gabriel, who's the husband of Crystal Viper, the singer from Crystal Viper, Bart Gabriel, and he's in Poland, and he wrote female metal. You know, people go, females don't really do metal, but can you think of any? And he started off, and the list was huge. It was
of course. I mean, you get so many stupid people on social media nowadays. I remember when my aunt joined Torture Squad, she got so much shit. I mean, I know her, and I know the new guitar player in it. I love all the people in that band. And nobody said a thing about the guitar player, but everything went for her, you know. And I saw her live before, and she's incredible, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the thing is, you know, fortunately, you know, I took Nervosa on tour when it was Prika and Fernanda, who I know.
Yeah, I shared the stage with them at that with that lineup. The drummer is incredible. They're great. They're very hard working there.
Amazing. And of course I knew Torture Squad, and then to have me in there, you know, who I already respected from what she'd done before, was like, wow. And also on the track, it's like Maximilian, Maximilian, who does the Small Rights thing. They won a competition in Poland with her former band to play Bloodstock. They won the competition. I went to see them at Bloodstock, and amazing voice, amazing performance. And so, you know, when people go like, yeah, I don't know if women should be doing metal, I'm like, oh my God, you've got to get out of the house.
It's stupid. How stupid is that?
It's great.
Yeah, you got me very curious about this Maximina, because I never heard of her, but now I want to check her out.
Smoke Rights. They're very good, but brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'll send you a link too, and anybody, if you
awesome.
The guy who did the Sabatonero videos for me, Andy Pilkington, very famous videographer, and he did their first lyric video, and it's amazing, you know, the whole thing. So yeah, I'll make sure you got a link.
Sure. I'm really curious, because nowadays you have I know so many friends, so many female friends with bands. I just produced a band called Megaida, and their singer, she's like a female version of Bruce Dickinson. Incredible voice. And they all sing about Greek mythology and stuff mixed with death metal, and it's a very good band, female from it. And I hear so many good bands around with female singers, female players. you get like All That Remains. They had a female bass player, both thrower, right?
Yeah. Well,
Female bass player.
exactly. You know, I mean, there's the Joe Bench and Robin Mazim, and you have, I mean, there's millions of them. You know, and when I go to Japan, you know, it's like, oh my God, you know, Little Ree plays, she's a guitarist there, and I go and do some like kind of big jams thing there, you know, like Marty Friedman does. I'm not doing them like Marty Friedman, but you know, I go over there and we do these big jam things, and you know, these female players come in, and like one came in one day, and there was a little piano, and she sat down and tinkle tinkle, and I said, oh wow, you play the piano too? And she went, not really. And I said, oh, play me something, I love the piano. And she played like this concerto thing, and I said,
oh my God.
good. And she went, yeah, I'm not so good. I was like, fucking hell, amazing. And
yeah.
I think when you're that, like Burning Witches, or, you know, I mean, Doro led the way, Lita Ford and all
that.
Yeah,
Doro, of course. Vixen.
Yeah. But when you look now, everything from black metal to death metal to across the board, you know, there's women kicking major ass. You know, I mean, Arch Enemy, for God's sake, you know. I mean, wow.
You want to hear something which is really curious? Is that I teach the guitar, and I've been doing this for 20 years. When I began teaching, like in the 90s, I had like 1 or 2 female students once in a while. But nowadays, most of the young girls, they're female. All younger students I have. And I have 2 of them, and they're like 12 and 16. I'm teaching them to listen to metal and stuff. There was like, I had a lesson with them, and I said, look, you don't know any guitar players. Okay, and I sat them down and I had them listen from Chuck Berry to Slayer and with everything in between. So you have to do this for the new generation. And also it's good that we have the diversity, you know, have all sorts of people playing metal.
Absolutely. And, you know, and I think, you know, that was my idea with the Sabatonero thing, because it's, you know, you can't be Black Sabbath, but I wanted to ping people like I have Terence Hobbs on there. I have Marty Friedman on there.
Wow, Friedman's great.
I have, you know, I have Rasmus Bolanderson from Diamond Head. Then I have the girls on there. I have Flidias from Necrodeath from Italy, you know, who's very, and it's so, you know, Steve Sylvester from Death SS does Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and Snowy Shaw from Merciful Fate and everybody else, he's drumming on it, and then Mantis plays solos. So it's like, you know, I wanted to just show that our community is so diverse, and it doesn't matter how there's someone who's 60, someone who's 20, and they're all playing it, and one's a guy and one's a girl, and it doesn't make any difference. It's all the music, and it's all our history. And
exactly, I used to play with Warren Dane. He was 20 years older than me, and he was from the States, you know. And we were we had the same common language, which was music, and we were writing together. He lived in my house for a while.
Brilliant.
So good, so good, and it has no boundaries.
No, it has no boundaries, and it you know, it speaks to your soul. I remember being a young guy. Well, I'm 28 now. Did I say 28 or 27? So when I was about 24.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. No, but I remember someone saying to me, "Oh, who's your favorite guitarist?" And I was like, I don't know. And they went, well, you must have one that you really like. I was going, well, I don't know. I'd never really thought about it. And they said, yeah, but who, like someone who really wails on a solo? And I said, well, you know, I saw Gary Moore, and I think he's great. I said, but, you know, I went to see B.B. King, and B.B. King could play one note 50 different ways. He can make you laugh. He can make you cry. He can make you sad. He can make you thoughtful just by holding one note and what came out of his mouth. And I thought, you know, music isn't always about technique. It's about how it feels. And
yeah, you know, there's a funny story about B.B. King. Once his wife, I mean, he was very depressed and he didn't want to leave the house. And his wife came to him and said, look, let's do something. And she took him to watch Andres Segovia, great classical guitar player.
Yes. Yeah.
And it really touched him. And they were from a very different backgrounds, from very different cultures, they're very different types of music. And it just reached for him in a way that words can't.
Yeah. That's it. There's two, you know, the two cellos. If you watch the two cellos playing AC/DC, or
Yeah, I seen them.
it's
They were
just
like,
amazing. And I watched, they did a concert at Sydney Opera House, and the concert, they played some classical, but they played lots of rock and lots of AC/DC. But they played,
of course.
you know, they played just Bon Jovi, and it was like, wow, I love hearing the strings, particularly cello. And you know, there's things like that. There's one of my favorite go-to things for, you know, trying to get my mind, you know, because I suffer a lot with, you know, depression, and I'm kind of bipolar, I guess. But, you know, sometimes I just want to get my mind to relax a little bit. And there's a guy who does bass tapping, and he does Depeche Mode, Enjoy the Silence. And he does,
And a great song.
it's just the bass. He's just tapping, and it's just incredible. And it doesn't matter how many times I hear it, it just comes straight into my guts and just pulls at my heart. And that's the power of the music. That was what B.B. King experienced. And when I saw B.B. King, that's what I experienced when I watched B.B. King.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, Yngwie Malmsteen in a 4-bar can play 10,000 notes and make just like incredibly. B.B. King can play 2 notes in a 4-bar and have just.
It sounds incredible.
So it's the intention.
It's funny. Exactly. I mean, you hear so many players nowadays, and I mean, nowadays, you know, YouTube and Instagram, you can see so many incredible people, and it just reaches. You know, the funny thing is, like, I used to live in Scotland when I was really young, and I remember listening to lots of Celtic music back then, and it really spoke to me in a way that it just reaches you. You know, it's so funny. There's no rational explanation of that power of music.
No, I mean, the same thing. You know, I was saying about being introduced to Mayhem, and you know, I kind of thought, yeah, it's kind of raw, and it's you know, the intention was right there. And that was very Venom-esque, I guess, inspired, because that was very raw,
I know. I listened to that. I used to listen to that. Oh, by the way, Castor from Torture Squad just joined.
Yes,
he's watching.
Well,
Great guy.
I think the difference was, you know, that the recording back then, you had 2 or 3 days to record. It was all about money. It was 2-track generally, so you just get in, record, and get the fuck out. So that was it. Whereas the trouble I think I had with the genre of black metal when it began, you know, with kind of Mayhem or whatever, was I was thinking, you know, you're trying to sound really bad, like Burzum did. He wanted to record as bad as good and everything. And I was thinking, you know, to try and imitate that, but it didn't feel genuine to me, the intention, because they were doing it on purpose. So I didn't get it. And the bands in the early days didn't do it on purpose. I mean, I know Tom Fisher will say about you know, Hellhammer, that they tried to sound worse, you know. But it's the equipment and the guitar, cheap guitars, cheap equipment, not much time, not much studio equipment back then. So that's why you got the sound. But when you had everything in the 90s available much more, it just didn't seem to make sense to me. But being introduced to them, I totally got what she was telling me. You know, her story, how it was Maximina from Smoke Light. She said, when she told the story of how she found it, and I could see in her eyes the meaning of it, all of a sudden it changed for me, because it had touched her soul so much. And I started to see it very different. And like I say, now I totally get it, and I love it, you know. And I think sometimes you don't connect because you're preconceiving a lot of things, and you have to give yourself time to understand it. So, yeah.
It took me a while to understand Mayhem as well. I think I had the same feelings. Like, why does it sound so bad? But then I just saw that there was an aesthetic thing behind it, especially behind Burzum, Mayhem, because they were listening to all those Cannibal Corpse records, Morbid Angel records, which were like very pristine.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we want to be the opposite of that. We want to be really raw and intense and be just like those like prehistorical black metal bands. And then from an aesthetic, standpoint, then it made sense, you know, because I remember I heard that Mayhem, they recorded like Freezing Moon record, like on the best,
Freezing Moon.
the Mysteries of SATÄ, that's from in the best studio in Norway. Yeah. And they just wanted to sound it like, for it to sound like that, you know?
Yeah.
So it was from an artistic standpoint. So it took me years and years to realize that. I remember I was 18 and I had this guitar student and he brought me like, he went, hey, I want to learn this song. And it was Freezing Moon and had all this Burzum, Venom, and Dimo Borgir. And they used to go out at like weekends with corpse paint and stuff. And they used to get their used to get their ass kicked by some older guys who didn't like them to wear like black metal and stuff. So black metal, they had that, you know, they had all the gang violence related to that in Brazil as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, of course, and that's not exclusive to Brazil, that kind of reaction and stuff. But I think it is about an understanding, and I think, you know, you mentioned like say CC or you know Chuck Schuldiner with Death and Obituary.
Incredible, I love them.
Yeah, the whole death metal scene. But I think the same thing with the thrash scene, like because we had that evolution of thrash in the UK. But when in the 80s, we couldn't combat the Americans because we didn't have the money. So there was no labels, you know, that were championing we had Neat Records and maybe London and a couple of other labels, but they were focused on traditional rock and traditional heavy metal until Music Foundation started buying Metallica and stuff. And then you had, you know, the Onslaughts and Acid Rains and Slammers and those bands started coming through. But we were totally sunk by the Americans because they could afford to tour. They could afford to. It
was like Anthrax, Metallica, Testament.
Sorry, I got to put my glasses on.
Some people said something.
Casta suck it.
Oh, Castor from Torture Squad was around there.
Okay.
Guten Abend is.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Sorry,
you know, it's funny because I never thought of this this way, you know, because I remember there was Onslaught and stuff, but later on you had the grindcore scene in England, right? You had Napalm Death, Carcass, early Carcass, right? Benediction, which was like that, you know.
Yeah, very much like the black metal scene and the way, you know, Burzum and Mayhem approached that was, you know, they didn't want to overproduce it. You know, it was great for being in America, and there's nothing wrong with those records and those bands, but there's a particular, you know, production value, and there's a particular amount of money that went in, and they went the other way. And I think, you know, because we were burgeoning our scene in the UK and there wasn't the money, I think you ended up with Napalm Death and Carcass, who went, oh, let's go the other way. Let's not try and be commercial. Let's be completely uncommercial. And actually, that's what exploded into something amazing. But that's always the case. You know, it's like you don't get a next progressive step from music by trying to you know, please the public all the time, because that's pop music. You know, when you get Benediction, Benediction, great band.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
exactly.
Brilliant. But
Manchester, right?
Yeah, you know, but that's it. You always get an evolution or a revolution in music when people go anti everything, and that's where you get the most creative thing. Because, you know, if you have a million bands all playing the similar style to this or the similar style to that, they're one of a million bands. But who is the one standout band that began it? You know, so you could say, what's the epitome of death metal? Is it Possessed with Jeff? You know, but then you have a whole category of amazings, you know, your Obituaries, your Malevolent Creations and stuff like that. Jimmy Burgers and Immortals and all that, but progression and there'll be some other form of music that will break through. Yeah, and I think particularly because of COVID, because, you know, artists like yourself, you've been teaching and we've been recording and I've been doing multi-projects, but what about the young artists? What about those guys and girls that would have been playing and recording and touring, even in clubs, while the pandemic hadn't happened. But it has happened for over 2 years, and it could be another year in some places. So those young people are going to be forming themselves into something extraordinary. So when they hit the ground running, we're going to hear something completely different. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, that's something I really bet on. By the way, I have another question. Just it popped up. You said that you were from a very working class environment when you were growing up.
Yes.
So how did music play out in your upbringing, and how did metal music connect with you, being like a very young working class?
Well, it's kind of strange, because I'm just writing my book at the minute, and I've just, it's in musicals.
That's interesting.
It's from what I was born into, and goes all the way through. But it's exactly that. It was like, my mum and my dad were into rock and roll, so I was raised on Bill Haley and the Comets and Buddy Holly, and that was the thing. Of course, I was born in the 60s, so there was an evolution there. By the time I got to the 70s, I was very aware of glam rock, T-Rex, Bowie, all of that kind of stuff. And so, but then about 74, we moved to Canada, and I walked straight into Ted Nugent, Kiss, Aerosmith, and I was like, oh shit. And everybody was into that, long hair. When I returned back to the UK about 78, punk rock, the Sex Pistols had just exploded. So I walked back into punk rock, and I thought, oh my God, I've gone to another planet. What the fuck is going on? These like crazy bands with like jumping up and down and spitting. And I was like, wow. And so that was kind of what I'd walked into. And the environment that I'd been in was, my father was a shipbuilder, a very working class, coal and building ships was all they did. All my family were in shipbuilding, and
just like Mr. Lamb.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I became a real carpenter, but that, I think that's it. I think like Sheffield, Black Sabbath from Birmingham, all of that really dark working class environment, stimulates you, and the music just naturally became heavy. So I think that environment created, the type of music that you played. People weren't playing happy songs like, we wanted to play something dark and heavy, and the heavier it was, the best it was. And even if you look at the Scandinavians, with the black metal scene, if there's places in Sweden, for example, where it's dark most of the year. So if you're in that environment, and you're in the wild somewhere, your music's not going to be happy. Oh, isn't it lovely to be here kind of music? It's going to be pretty heavy, and I think the best music from our point of view, certainly from the underground, the best music comes from life, comes from your experience, comes from your influence and how you feel. And that could be political, it could be, like Anarchy in the UK from the Sex Pistols, or it could be like the Clash, I thought the law won White Riot, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like
or early Iron Maiden.
Yeah. Or it could be, kind of like the Nordic, taking our heritage back. Fuck Catholicism and your churches, because the church burnings in that scene, being labeled as satanic, and I'm not saying that there aren't any neo-Nazi bands or there aren't any satanic bands. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it was a blanket that the media used to make these all look bad. But the whole idea was, the like in South America, and if you go all the way up California, there's mission districts everywhere, and the Incas and the Mayans were all destroyed by the Spanish conquistador, and so they were wiped out. And everybody's fucking Catholic now. Well, probably the Amazonians wouldn't have been Catholic if the Spanish hadn't turned up. They'd still be, doing their traditional stuff. And it's the same thing.
Rituals and stuff. Yeah, there's this black metal band called Miastenia. They're from the Brasilia, and all their lyrics are about that. They're about the Indians and the pre-Columbian cultures and stuff. And the singer, female singer as well. She's a historian as far as I know, and they're an amazing band. incredible. You should check them out.
Even if you think, I mean, you know, one of the most famous metal bands is Sepultura. Okay,
Yeah, of course. I mean,
and one of the biggest songs that they did that was recognizing was Roots.
Roots.
And so there you go. It's like the minute they start to, you know, they identified this is where we came from, you know, this is our roots. And that, you know, the video and the song and, you know, that just blew up massively. And I think that's a thing with, and it's indicative of a revolution. And that's what the Scandinavians, by burning the churches, it was more about get out. We want to have Thor, we want to have Odin, we want to have our heroes, and we want to have our mythology. You know, there's a great tradition of Viking mythology, and they wanted it back, you know, so, you know.
It's funny you mentioned Roots, because I've seen people go ape shit with that song in America, over here, and in Europe. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. People just go crazy with that song. And it's so primordial, you know, it's so primitive, it's so in your face, you know. So it's something you just feel. And it's very in your face, and the lyrics, they just speak to you. You know, I remember when it was released, I was 15, 16, and I was living in the UK, and it was so big in the UK. And nobody here, and the funny thing is, in Brazil, nobody here, people just don't get how much Sepultura is big everywhere, you know. And I witnessed their heyday, you know. So it's something that many people here just overlook.
You know, that I think that's indicative of homegrown stuff sometimes. I mean, it always used to puzzle me. You would have, you know, people would go, you know, oh, we gave the world Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, and, you know, how prolific we were. And the Beatles came out of here, and we had all this. And then, you know, the British press would run to America and be almost bowing down to the, and you're going, what about all the British bands? There was very little support. I mean, there was support. There was individuals, but there was not a lot of support for the British thrash scene, definitely, and it died because of it. And yet, you know, Anthrax would make covers of magazines easily because they were exotic, because they're from America, and people were buying into that. You know, the sneakers.
We have the same exact American thing here.
So Yep, and so, you know, that's why you can have, you know, we could go to, I don't know, we could go to somewhere else on the other side of the planet and have, you know, sell out a show, and we could play in Newcastle and maybe get 200 or 300 people and no press coverage.
Okay. Hey, Tony, we just had a little problem here because we have a time limit, but you were saying that you would play Newcastle for 200 people and you would fill out. I mean, we have exact same problem over here in Brazil. Same with bands and stuff.
I think it's purely because, you know, because people get fascinated by people who are not from your country. So, you know, you know, you want to see somebody exotic and where they're from and talk to them, and it's kind of a mystery, so it's interesting. And you know, like, oh, I could see this band down the street anytime, but this band are flying in. Oh my God, they're from somewhere you know, so it's a dream state. You know, everybody wants to go to America, and everybody wants to eat burgers and see the Rockies and all of that. So, you know, that's what happens. And Japanese bands love European bands, and European bands love Japanese bands, and South American love Japanese bands, and Japanese love South America. You know, so it's an exchange, really. But it's very difficult to get bands out of the country. So you have to have some kind of success that you can then elevate and get yourself out. And
I think that's a universal truth. You know, I had lots of problems when I was playing with Moraldane, because we had like all the Americans who played with him before, and then everybody sees like a Brazilian band playing with the guy, and we get a backlash from that. You know, it's funny. We and there's that kind of prejudice, unfortunately.
You know, you have one thing I always admire, like Paul Diano was a good friend, and you know, Blaze Bailey.
Yeah, please. I opened for him once.
Yeah, you want, but you know, they have, you know, you're in a situation, and even I was asked many times, you know, to come down and just for me to come down and just use Brazilian musicians, and we just tour because they're already there. And you have these amazing, you have this amazing chorale of musicians who can play anything you want to play. So Blaze doesn't need to put a band together to come down and play Iron Maiden songs. He could just get in there.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. So some of the guys who played with him were friends of mine. They were very good, very,
yeah, exactly.
very professional, you know.
Yeah,
So and they could pull off anything, you know.
Yeah, Paul Speckman from Master, he goes down there and always gets his guys and changes around, and that's what he does, you know. And
I mean, with Master, you know, once they were playing over here, and a friend of mine brought him over, and the guitar player, I know, got sick or something, and then he got a friend of mine to do the tour, and the guy had to learn the songs in 2-3 days, and he did it, you know. And the guy was very good guy. And I know him, and he was very talented.
And, you know, I mean, obviously, if you're not a huge artist like SATÁ or something where you want to bring 1,200 people and all of your equipment and all of that, but if you're doing it on a club level, it makes sense because you have incredible musicians there. It's like when I go to Japan and do those sessions, I don't need to bring players with me if it's not a Venom show. You know, there's these incredible musicians from Psy and from Survive and from
Psy is great.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
So I just turn up and we all just jam, and it's amazing, you know. So I think that's really nice because on a cultural level, you're embracing your environment and then embracing, you know, it's universal, and I love that. I really love that. I love doing that.
So, Tony, it was great talking to you. I think we have to wrap up. I'm going to a bar now because they're going to play the new KK Downing album, and there's going to be a listening party, and I'm going there. Yeah. It's called the Metal Bar. Yeah, one of the owners is a student of mine. The guys are great. And if you ever come over here, I'm going to take you there. That's a promise.
Well, we have got some shows lining up, I think, with Nasty Savage for 2022. I think around about April time. So we'll be there. I will be in Sao Paulo and in some other places in Brazil and in South America. So
just let me know.
You have to take me. So it's a deal.
I will. So thank you very much, man. So we'll talk again. And I want to hear that Polish girl you're talking about.
Yes. Okay? I'm going to send you the link straight away, so you've got that in the video. And then if you can put the video on your page, so the guys can see it, and we talked about it.
Of course, sure. We'll do that.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody. Thank you so much. Muito obrigado for listening to my talk. And I shall see you later. Boa noite.
Thank you.
Boa noite.
Boa noite.
Be good. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.